Hey, good morning. I get to go to water safari today. I'm like a big kid. It's the last day, or almost the last day. Actually, tomorrow's the last day. Why am I doing that? Because my Access group and some other friends and family are going to water safari. And if you're like, oh, I want to go to water safari, well, you need to be in an Access group. What's your Access group doing? And if you're in one, tell them we ought to go to water safari next time. Like, I promise that's not all we do. Okay, I promise, but something we're doing today. Listen, we're doing this fellowship series. We've started it. This is the fourth Sunday. We got 2 more to go after this, so buckle your seatbelts. And today we're going to talk about this word, loyalty. Loyalty. Yeah, that'll be fun, right? I promised you a good one last week. I did. I made you super uncomfortable about the speech thing, and now loyalty. Oh, isn't this going to be fun? So this is one I see people struggle with big time, all right? And it's one of those things that we're all looking for. Like, nobody wants people to be disloyal to them, but the idea of giving out loyalty seems really, really risky, right? I have been trained by media and our culture to believe that loyalty is like a trap or something. You know, every time you hear about loyalty, it's always connected to some big scandal, right? Loyalty is what enables leaders to get away with shifty things, okay? It causes people to be blind so that more powerful people can get away with things. That's the world's perception of what loyalty does. And the idea of loyalty is almost equal to stupidity. Honestly, I mean, you listen to, loyal supporters of such and such still maintain that, blah, 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 morons, like, can't they see, But the idea gets driven home by all the bad experiences that we've personally had with loyalty. People you thought were your friends, you were faithful to them, and then, guess not. Like, I guess it wasn't both ways. I thought it was, but I guess it's not, right? Like, that's a real upset. Who here could honestly say that you've experienced that? I want a real show of hands. Who here has been burned by somebody they thought was loyal or not loyal? Come on, raise them up. Put them up there. Put them up there. Put them up there. We hit the vein today. Yeah. Now you're probably leery of anything that I have to say about loyalty. If that's you raised your hand, you should be a little leery. And actually what you'll find is God's wisdom is you should be very cautious about who you choose to be loyal to. It's actually all over in the Proverbs. God is getting the idea across you need to be intentional and thoughtful about who you align your life with. Because there are real dangers to setting yourself up to count on someone that's not going to carry the ball when the time comes. So I don't think I need to spend a lot of time convincing you of the risk of misplaced loyalty. Probably pretty good at guarding yourself from being loyal at all if you've been burned very many times. But what I want to do today is work kind of hard to get you to remember there's actually an upside to having people that you are intensely loyal to and vice versa. It's not just meaningless risk. I want to expand your mind a little bit and cause you to remember, if you can, and to get you to think about what could happen in your life with loyalty in it that won't happen any other way. So I'm going to take you to one of the best examples of next level fellowship that I can find in the Old Testament. And there are a number of examples. We're going to look at 2 more next week, the week after that. Real old school, Old Testament examples, things that may have just kind of like, right over your head if you're a Bible reader, like, I don't really, what's that? We're going to get right into it. But this is the story of David and Jonathan. And I don't know if you know anything about David. This is King David we're talking about. King David, as a young man, gets a visit from a prophet named Samuel. It comes and says, basically, you are going to be the next king of Israel. That's you, okay? And God gives him that download, and he shares it with him. But the thing is, the nation of Israel already has a king. Their very first king. They're a fledgling nation. His name is Saul, and he's a tall, kingly-looking guy. He goes out and he conquers things with his army and takes names and all that good stuff. And the only problem with Saul is that he's intensely insecure. And insecure leaders are a danger. But Saul has an issue one day. He got a little situation. It's common back then, but the thing is, the neighbors want all of their stuff. They want all their land, they want all the wine, they want all the food, they want all the work, the service, they want the women, the song, everything. Okay? And their name is the Philistines, and so they send out an army, and Israel sends an army out to stop them, and guess what? The Philistines are a little bit arrogant, and to sometimes save a little bloodshed, sometimes they would issue these challenges. They'd find the biggest, tallest, meanest man killer in the whole group, and they'd put him out front, and they'd say, if you guys got anybody out here that's man enough to take this guy down, why don't you prove to all of us how great a nation Israel is and how great this God you serve is? Come on out. And if you can defeat him, well, we'll just leave. We'll all just go home. That happened. And so, of course, there was a lot of hemming and hawing because the guy's really big. Really, really big. He's the biggest guy anybody could find. And mean and nasty and intimidating. And so, they sit out there, they're all camped out, waiting to see who will go out and meet this guy. And guess what? Nobody will do it. Except David gets wind of this. He's basically just a boy still. And when David hears about this, he has a conviction that apparently nobody else has. And it's simply this. It's wrong to represent God and be a coward. Doesn't matter how big you are, or small, or whatever, it's wrong to be out here in the field and claim we're the army of God, and there isn't anybody here that's man enough, courageous enough to just go and meet the guy, come whatever. That's wrong. It's so wrong he volunteers himself, even though, who could be less likely? He's never fought another man in his entire life. I don't even know if he's been in a fist fight. He's going to go out and meet the giant, Goliath. So he goes out there with some stones and a sling, which are basically the only thing he's really comfortable using, and he throws his best 90-mile-an-hour fast stone and corks the guy in the skull, knocks him out, they cut his head off. David is instantly famous. Instantly. He immediately gets a position in the army, to lead men into battle. It's like, wow, okay, well, I guess you're the guy now, And so, instant promotion. Saul pays special attention to him. And the best thing to come out of it, though, is the friend that he makes when Saul's son Jonathan witnesses and then listens to what David has to say about what happens. Okay? It says in 1 Samuel 18, after David had finished talking with Saul, this is after the giant Goliath is slain, Jonathan, it says, became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. Well, what in the world does that mean? One in spirit. What is that? So I recognize we have similar tastes in music. So, we'll be friends now. Or, I notice, I really like your fighting style. I was taught a little bit about the sling. We're going to be best pals. Or, we both really love to travel to national parks. So that's going to be a great basis for our friendship. We're going to get around the world. Well, no. You see, Jonathan both watched what David did and he heard what David said as Saul interviews him. And Saul interviewed him before and after what happened. And there's something in Jonathan that recognizes what makes this young man tick in his spirit, on the inside, in the who you really are inside, part of you. And something in Jonathan recognizes, I should be ticking on the same thing. Whatever it is inside of you that makes you tick, that should be what makes me tick too. David answered a question, what should a man be like if he actually trusts God? David answered it in deed and he answered it in word. And Jonathan took that and he said, that's what a man ought to be if he trusts God. And that's what I ought to be if I trust God. Wow. First he explains it, then he shows it, then he explains it some more. Yeah, that's what I should be about too. That's the kind of integrity that I want to be about at heart. That's the kind of faith that I want to have in my God too. Now, how many friendships have you ever had that were built on something that deep? Think about it. You know, most people's friendships are made around something that matters to them. Right? You know, well, my favorite hockey team is awesome, and you understand that too. So guess what? You know, we're close. We're going to be close, right? We're going to hang out a lot. You know, we love to travel. We're going to hang out. We both love the Bills, even though they never win. We're going to hang out. You know, we're going to have a brotherhood around that. You know, we both work together in the same environment. We're going to be friends. We both love, you know, reading murder mysteries. I don't know. But how many of your friendships align with you on what matters the most to you? The most. There's a difference. See, it's not as easy to find people who believe the same thing that you believe about what matters the most in all of life. What do you believe about Jesus? What do you believe that means for your life personally? What do you believe that means about telling the truth, integrity, generosity, forgiveness, reconciliation, unity? What do you really believe about those things? And how common is it to find someone that believes at the depth that you're talking about the same things? And not just says the right things about those things, but does the right things about those things. When John recognizes he has that kind of an opportunity in front of him, he leaps. I mean, it's instant. I don't know what he was really thinking about it, just something recognized. Wow, right? It's magnetic. And so from that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David. This is getting serious. A covenant with David because he loved him as himself. A covenant is a declaration that you make in front of God, to God, saying, I'm going to do such and such by this person, come whatever. I'm gonna be loyal to this person. I'm going to treat them like however I say I'm about to treat them from now on. And you'd give that person a token to remember that commitment. So Jonathan doesn't just give him a token, he gives him like basically his whole like royal wardrobe on the spot. Gives him his own sword and his bow and his belt and his outer coat. I mean, don't worry, he's not stripped down naked, okay? They wore more clothes than just a couple of pieces, but he just gives him everything right there. Now Saul, just so you know, Saul is the one welcoming David into his house, but Saul's got a different kind of a friendship in mind. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I don't know. But Saul brings David in close so he could keep an eye on David. Because Saul is super insecure. And especially when Saul realizes like how popular David is becoming with the people because of how brave he is, he starts getting some different ideas. You know, and he actually, you know, at first he starts kind of like quietly thinking of ways that he can get rid of David. because David's making him uncomfortable. All this praise heaped on this young man. David's a handsome man, and they're like, oh, what's this going to, is he going to end up being, I don't like this. So, he comes up with these little ways. He comes up, he dangles his daughter's hand in marriage, kind of like a carrot in front of David, and then thinks to himself, well, now I can manipulate David by goading him into proving himself, by putting him in all kinds of crazy danger. David, you go out and prove yourself, kill 100 men by yourself. Maybe that'll get rid of him, And if he doesn't, I'll come up with something else. So that's the kind of thing that's going on behind the scenes, but it gets worse, and the king becomes more outward. One day he comes and tells Jonathan and all the servants of the palace, your job right now is to kill David. That's it, period. Kill David. So John's loyalty begins to be tested. One thing you need to understand about loyalty is that it only shines in a test. It doesn't really do you any good to have loyalty until there's a test for the loyalty. That's when it does something. Now, John talks the king out of this, or so he thinks. Saul's kind of smart, even though he's kind of dumb. He recognizes he's best buds with my friend. Okay, I guess I can't really trust Jonathan okay. So, David becomes convinced Saul is not giving up. Saul's getting smarter, he's going under the radar, and he's coming up with a plan. And David goes and talks with Jonathan and says, look, I'm like this close to death all the time. Whenever I'm in that palace, I'm this close to dying. You have no idea. And John's like, if my dad was going to kill you, I'd know. You can't convince him. They go back and forth about it. And finally, Jonathan just recognizes David is just so freaked out, he's going to have to help him. He's going to have to sound out. That's what the Bible says. He's going to sound out whether or not his dad really intends to kill David. Now, this is where things get kind of thick, because this is getting really, really risky. You've got a psychopathic father who is also the king and can do anything he wants, and he's given to these wild mood swings where he throws spears at people, intending to kill them, and then just plays it off, oh, I was just messing around. And I missed. And so, they come up with this plan to sound him out, and it's a risky plan, all right? If either one of these guys, Jonathan or David, gives in to their own fear or their own self-interest and lets a little something loose, casually lets somebody know, or just gives it, oh, I'm sorry, Dad, this is what we're trying to figure out. Dad can send somebody out there and pick David up in a heartbeat before he has time to get somewhere far. And if Dad realizes that Jonathan's trying to play him because he's just that mad, treason's not cool with kings. This is serious. This is, and so Jonathan made a covenant, another covenant with the house of David, with David and his whole family, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. He's saying, if I ever do anything against my friend to cause him to stumble or betray him, then God hold me accountable personally. May God deal with me. It's serious if you believe. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Now, what do you make of that? They go through it. They go through with it. And guess what? Dad planned to kill David. It was real. The only thing that saves David's life here, the only thing that saves David's future, that saves God's plan to use David for the grand reveal, all the things that he would do out of David's lineage, all the way on down to Jesus Christ himself on the earth, all comes back to this moment where God counted on using the loyalty of these two friends. That's how it came to be. That was part of God's plan. You should be open to the possibility that God intends for loyalty to play a part in your life somewhere, in some fellowship, in some important spiritual connection, there's going to be something where you actually have to have loyalty from another person important in your life, or you won't make it. So, this is going to be fun. Take all of your friends. The friends, like the people you think, okay, those are my friends. Friends. Hanging out with my friends. And give them the David and Jonathan test for a minute. You know what I mean by that? Like, I know you got friends that you're like, well, they're funny. Okay, they're funny. All right, oh, they like the Bills. Okay, not too many people do, so I get that. But sorry. It's hard not to say something. But would you trust them in a situation like this? Would you trust them with your actual life on the line? Would you trust them, if your kids' lives were on the line? If you have kids? That'll slow you down, won't it? Won't it? Right? Because all of a sudden, if it's real and you're considering this person, like, would they give in to their own self-interest, their own anxieties, and throw me under the bus? Like, if it got real, would they? All of a sudden, you're thinking about a whole lot of different things. You're not thinking about if they like your hockey team. Like, who cares anymore, right? You're not thinking about, if they like to travel or if they like to, go to water safari. You're not thinking about all those things. All of a sudden, it's a whole different set of qualities. You're thinking, like, do they have integrity? Like, do they actually do what they say that they will do? You're thinking, like, how serious are they about honoring God? Like, really, really serious. How are they thinking casually about making big claims that they're not going to follow through on? Do they always say the right things, but then, like, way less often do the actual kinds of things that they admire? Like, what? You're thinking about a whole lot of things. You're asking yourself, really, is this person really one in spirit with me? Do they identify with me at that level? It's real easy to build what I would call casual friendships. Or I wouldn't even use the word friend. I'd say companions. It's really easy to find companions in the world. Some of you are like, I'm an introvert. It's not that easy. Well, I'll give you that. If you're an introvert, it's not that easy to just go out there and get companions. But comparatively to what it is to find this kind of one in spirit thing, it's easy to find companions. I can go out and find companions. I just got to go out and just start talking about stuff that I like. And if somebody else starts, oh yeah, blah, 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 it's like, aha, somebody bit the hook, right? I think we could get something going here. But, most of us, when we build our friendships, we're not actually imagining ever being in a position to really need loyalty from that person. Just thinking, it's fun to hang out, right? So, okay. And there's nothing wrong with hanging out. And in fact, some of the best hanging out you're ever going to do is hanging out with people who are one in spirit with you. But take this moment in history and imagine God would be willing to make a plan in your life that required loyalty for you to go to the next level. Whatever that is. You're not just going to start. I mean, you'll remember what they said, but you're going to be remembering what they do. What do they do? What do they do? What do they do? Things you don't think about. But that we should. That we should. We should be, if we want to be strong, if we actually are serious about pursuing God's will for our life and wherever that may take us, we should be looking at what people say and what they do. And looking for people who that we can be one in spirit with, the way Jonathan was one in spirit with David. Look for people who believe what you believe about what matters the most. That matters according to your convictions. What matters most to you in Christ Jesus? What matters? Is it the love of other people? Is it real forgiveness? Is it getting rid of bitterness and scuzzy attitudes? Is it being generous? All of these things. Is it being a disciple? I mean, you could put it a million different ways. You should be looking for somebody you can be one in spirit with. I had this discussion on our access group before we even did this, just out at my house, an old campfire, a few of us talking about it. And like, this is all very theoretical sounding, like, oh, well, that sounds true, you should be careful, blah, blah, blah. And somebody asked the question, but what do you actually look for? Like, what are you looking for in a person? To decide if you're going to really, invest in that relationship, how do you decide? You know what? And I was like, that's a great question. Let me tell you, I've learned some things, and I'm here to share them with you. Just a handful of things. Red flag, green flag. How you look at somebody, how do they treat people who has nothing to offer them personally? You know what I'm talking about? There's somebody, maybe they're going through hardship, they don't have they're not going to repay you with a whole lot of networking or connections or money or opportunity. They're just there and they're hurting. I mean, how do they treat people like that? You should ask that question. Well, taking care of people is important. Do they take care of people? Is there anybody they take care of? Your discipleship is really important. It's very important. They say all the right things. Well, do you disciple anyone? Do you share what you've learned with somebody? Do you find a way to make that into your life someplace? One of the green flag, red flags for me is, how do they talk about people that they know when they're not in front of the people? This is like playground stuff, right? But you forget as adults, still applies. When somebody really disappoints them badly, how do they react to that? Oh, you want to watch that one. You really, really want to watch that one. I'll tell you why. Because guess what? Someday, somehow, you will disappoint them badly. And they will treat you the way that they treat people who disappoint them badly. So you have the opportunity right now to just kind of watch. Just see. Not just what they say, but what do they do? What do they do? Do they get all connivey? Do they get all I'll show that, I'm spiteful. Watch. Watch. Look for people you could be one in spirit with and feel good about it. And here's the thing, maybe you're kind of you know what, that's a great idea, Pastor James, but how do you just get, you just wait for God to send someone to your house and they knock and, is it when the Mormons come, they knock, so will it be like that, right? And the thing is, maybe not. I mean, maybe it could be, but likely you're going to have to put yourself in the kinds of places you have the chance to find someone you can be one in spirit with. That's why we do this access thing. That's why I never shut up about it. Like, you come to an access group. If you come to an access group, is that a guarantee that you'll immediately have besties? Like, well, no, but you got to get there, to be there, to even find out and you got to show up, and you got to be consistent and all that good stuff. And here's the next thing. Even if you put yourself there, even if you get to see and hear another person's heart, there's another step. You actually have to invest in them. You do. That's the biggest part of loyalty right there. You've got to invest. You actually have to make a place in your life for that person. You have to have a seat at the couch with their name on it. They should have a front row seat to your life somewhere. There should be people in your life who, when they call, you always call them back. And quick. Just ask, get a message, hey, do you want to do such and such? That kind of a person, you should answer them. Figure it out. Oh, I don't know if I can do it. Go figure it out. There should be people with a front row seat. Because loyalty has to be developed. It's a relationship. It's a growing, it's a plant. You have to keep watering it, or it's dying. You have to go after that thing. You have to make sure it's getting some sun. You have to pay some attention. And the more you do, the taller and the stronger and the shadier that thing gets. You got to invest. I know, you're like, so much investment, Pastor James. You're always telling us we got to rebuild our entire lives around doing the right thing. Yes. Yes, you do. That's part of what it is to be a Christian. If you really believe Christ, that's what you do. You overhaul your whole life and start with the things that are most important and work your way back. And so, you should be asking yourself, number one, what would it even cost to prioritize this kind of thing? What would I have to bump out of the way to make that a thing? What do I have to do to make time to put myself in the right places? And then what would it mean for me or me and my family to prioritize another person in our life, to sort of make them part of our family? What would I have to do? What has to go? Do I need to have a garage sale and get all the stuff out? Do I need to put some sale prices on some of my favorite stuff and, make room in my life, so to speak? You get what I'm saying? I've seen nods. Good. I don't have to keep talking. You get the point. And what if something amazing is hanging in the balance and you don't even know right now? What if this is supposed to be a season of strengthening for you? Where you get your bearings and you sort of shore your life up to be strong so that you're ready for the next thing that God has. What hangs in the balance? For Dave, it was the kingship. It was the leading of an entire nation by a faithful leader. For you, I can't say what it is. Maybe it's an important relationship that you're not prepared for yet. Maybe there's an important something for you to do that you're not going to be able to do because you don't yet have the strength spiritually in your life built. But this could be huge. Maybe it's just missing out on an important pearl of wisdom spoken right at the right time, just before you make the most gigantic mistake you've ever made. How are they going to say it to you if they're not there? They got to be there. It's the power of loyalty. So I'm going to pray for you this morning. Father, you know what we need in our lives to go the next step, to go the next 10 steps. You know what you have planned. You know what hangs in the balance. We barely scratch the surface. We think we know something, but we barely know anything. But I pray, Lord, that we would have the right people built into our lives for whatever the next season is. Maybe it's a season of celebration that we should be celebrating with somebody else and sharing that with somebody else, and it's just going to be glorious and amazing. Maybe it's a season of hardship. Maybe it's a season of a struggle. How much better it would be to go into that season with people we're one in spirit with about you. People who have our backs. People who will encourage us and remember us and be there and help. Either way, whatever season it is, God, I just pray that you will bless this group here with a loyalty in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more people in their lives, something that they will remember and maintain for the rest of their lives, something that gives them real strength in you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Oh, I'm not going to warn you what's coming next, but we are going to have a good time. Listen, our prayer teams will be up front here on each of the sides here, and we're going to end the stream there. But this morning, just generally...